Yo, yo, what's going on, world? Welcome to a brand new week and welcome to a brand new edition of what we call the Shifting the Culture podcast, where we dive headfirst into the different artists and events that have impacted hip hop culture, as well as the ones that still continue to do so to this very day. I am your host, the vegan you believe in, conscious Kurt in the flesh as always, and my co host needs no introduction, but fuck it. He's going to give you one anyway. Break it down for us.
Yo, what up, listeners? This is King Khan. Thank you for tuning in once again to another week of the Shift in the Culture podcast. What's going on, Conscious Kurt? How you been, man? How's everything going, and what you been up to this past few weeks?
Everything's been pretty chill. Just been catching up on a lot of old music I haven't listened to in years, and also some newer music that I needed to catch up on too. So that's been a good vibe. I've really been enjoying that. I've been enjoying the weather out here in the ATL and the vibes out here, and I'm looking forward to the holiday season, which is right around the corner. So I'm ready to get that popping, as well as ready to get this discussion popping as well.
Yeah, this time of year is always great. A lot of good energy, a lot of good music, a lot of good food and family get-togethers and whatnot. So yeah, definitely is one of the best times of the year.
Yes, it is, and it's especially a good time of the year if you are a Drake and a J. Cole fan, as it just came out yesterday that the both of them will be going on tour next year in 2024, and the tour is going to be called Big As the What. So it looks like that break that Drake was talking about taking and all that good stuff is not happening, as he's going to be going on tour next year with J. Cole. But I got to say, I'm down for this. I definitely would love to go check out a show. But unfortunately, like you told me yesterday, it's not coming to the ATL. So I will not have that option. Neither one of us will.
Yeah, it kind of sucks they're not coming down to Atlanta. I know the last Drake tour, the one with 21 Savage, definitely stopped through ATL. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe they'll add some more dates, and Atlanta will be one of the dates that gets added. But yeah, Drake, he did say that he was going to take a little hiatus, but maybe that was a hiatus from actually making new music, because it looks like right after, releasing this project, this solo album that he's going on tour with J. Cole. So it sounds like he's getting right back into it, starting the year off.
Yeah, it's not a bad vibe. I wouldn't mind going to the show. And I've actually never seen either one of them live. So that would be an experience.
Yeah, I always wanted to see J. Cole. I had a couple of chances to go see him, but for some reason I didn't go, which I'm beating myself up for not going through and buying the tickets. But yeah, this should be a great tour to check out. Drake and J. Cole are like basically like the Nas and Jay-Z of this era. So for them to actually join forces and to go on a tour together is really going to be a dope experience, and something that is a must watch if it comes to your city. So I would encourage you, if you're one of the lucky cities where they're going to touch down in, I would go and check out this tour, because you never know when you're going to get these two heavyweights together on a tour like that.
Yeah, this is some once in a lifetime type shit. So yes, like King Khan said, I would take advantage of that. And I would just go for J. Cole alone. Although I'm not hating on Drake or anything like that, I would personally just go for J. Cole alone. J. Cole alone is enough for the price of admission.
Yeah, same here. I love Drake too. Don't get me wrong. Like his music and everything he's done for the culture. Just J. Cole is just one of those artists where he's just like on another level, and the way he connects with the crowd and just his catalog. It would just be it would be great to see that in person.
Yeah, I'll get my chance eventually, sooner or later.
But hopefully it's not too late, because I know I think he said he's coming out with one more album called The Fall Off, and then he might not drop anything else after that. So you may be running out of chances to get your opportunity to go see him.
Bro, nobody ever stays retired in hip hop. You should know this by now.
Yeah, you're right about that, but I don't want to wait till he's like 50 years old or 40 years old. I want to see him now when he's like in his prime.
I get it, but who knows? Maybe he could still go in those years too. Look at Method Man and Redman.
Yeah, we'll see. But just the way that he's been talking over the last few years, it seems like he's trending in a direction where he's going to slow down. He's not going to be doing this as much. So, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'm wrong, but we'll see.
Yes, we will see. And also, this past Friday, the nominees dropped for the Best Rap Album Grammys, and the list goes as follows: Her Loss from Drake and 21 Savage, Heroes and Villains from Metro Boomin, Utopia from Travis Scott, Michael from Killer Mike, and King's Disease 3 from Nas. I fucks with this list.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent list. I would say though, I don't agree with the Travis Scott. I know there was a lot of hype for that album, but I just felt like it didn't hit like he thought it would. I wasn't really a fan of that album, to be honest. So I don't think it was up there as album of the year. The Drake Her Loss and 21 Savage, I don't have a problem with that. That album had a lot of popular tracks, so I have no issues there. The Killer Michael album was a masterpiece in my eyes. It was a well put together album, a lot of great production, a lot of good features. Hell, even Andre 3000 was on the project when I don't even know when the last time he was on a project. It might have been on like a Kanye album a couple years ago. But yeah, Andre 3000 doesn't make too many appearances, so it's great to hear him on the Killer Mike album. And that's just a deep personal album where it has a lot of a lot of depth to it, and it was definitely one contenders for album of the year. Metro Boomin album, Heroes and Villains, was pretty solid as well. Had that song with Future and Chris Brown that was pretty popular. And had a lot of good production, a lot of good tracks on there. The Nas King Disease 3, I actually went back and listened to it recently, and that album from beginning to end, it's pretty dope, and it's Nas just by himself. There's no features on that album, and from beginning to end, it's just a dope album, and I wouldn't be surprised if that one wins it. And then the last one, like I said, the Travis Scott Utopia, wasn't really a fan of that album. I would say Gunna's album, Gunna's A Gift and a Curse. A lot of people were giving Gunna a lot of flack because they said he might have snitched on Young Thug, but if you listen to his album, he has one of the best albums, and Fuck You Mean was probably one of the biggest songs, if not the biggest song this year. So I'm surprised that Gunna album wasn't on that list.
Yeah, beats like that. Sometimes certain albums that were good that definitely deserve to be nominated don't get nominated. And yeah, no matter what, you're never gonna please everyone. And like a lot of albums that do deserve love sometimes don't get that love. And I guess that's what happened in this case.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does happen. For the most part, as far as the best rap albums, I would say they did a pretty good job of putting this list together. So I would say if I had to pick one, I would probably go with Killer Michael. I think he's put in a lot of work over the years, and he stepped his game up lyrically, especially over the last few seasons, the last few albums that he's dropped with ELP as Run the Jewels crew. So I definitely fucks with the Killer Mike album. I would, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Nas King Disease 3 actually won, because other than King Disease 2, that's probably the best album in the King's Disease series. So I wouldn't be mad if either one of those albums win it and take it home this year.
Yeah, the Killer Mike Michael album I did listen to also, and yeah, it is fucking fire. Just that dude's content, his delivery, his flow. Yo, this dude is a fucking monster. He does Atlanta hip hop proud.
He's a dope artist. He does a lot of things for the community. He gives back. Does a lot of fundraisers. He's always speaking up on political things that are happening in Atlanta. So shouts out to Big Mike for giving back to the community and putting together a dope album. I actually got a chance to meet him back in college in my Tallahassee days. I actually met him at a Guthrie's. I don't know if you remember that place, the chicken tender
Yes, I
place when he
do.
came to Tallahassee. Yeah, one day me and my boys were getting some food, and he was out there promoting a mixtape, and he was passing out his mixtapes. This was after the time when the Outcast, the whole world. This was a few years after that, so he was a
Yeah,
little
I remember that. That's the first time I heard him was on that song. Yeah, back '02.
Yeah, I think that was his debut song or whatever. But this might have been like '04 around that time when I met him, and he was just down to earth. He was mad cool. He was just chopping it up with everybody that was outside the restaurant, and just talking about his project. And you don't see that with a lot of artists where they would go back and get in touch with the people like that. So it was dope to actually meet him, and it's dope to see him where he's at 20 years later, still in the game, still as relevant as he's ever been. And it's dope that Outkast has kind of retired and kind of fell back and did doing kind of laying low. But Killer Mike is out here dropping albums, and he's doing doing a lot of big things. So shouts out to Big Mike. Sorry, shouts out to Killer Mike.
Yeah, put out some good ass music, and also a credit to the community. Also, somebody who like really fights for people's rights and stands up for the right causes. So yeah, I fucks with Killer Mike. If he were to run for president next year in 2024, I would definitely vote for him over Biden and Trump.
Yeah,
Hands down.
Killer Mike will get my vote. He's a dope dude, and he gives us a voice.
Yeah, we needed him to run for president in 2020 more than Kanye. Fuck out of here.
Yeah, he's an artist I wouldn't mind actually running. He actually know what the hell he's talking about, and his family's
Exactly.
actually been part of the government and helped. I think I forgot, but his family is like really like I know that like his family history is like really goes deep. So I gotta look up, do some more research on it. But from what I remember, like he has family ties that are in the political and atmosphere, not just him. So shouts out to Killer Mike, yo. He's definitely a dope individual, a dope artist, dope person as well.
Yeah, very smart, good speaker, and he seems like somebody who could like really make moves and make a difference. So yeah, if he ever ran for office, he gets my vote 100%.
So, what do you think about best rap songs? What do you? I know some of the nominees were Doja Cat's and Attention, the Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice Barbie World, Lil Uzi Vert's just Wanna Rock, the Drake and 21 Savage, Rich Flex, and then the Killer Mike with Andre 3000, Future, the Scientists and Engineers. So, what do you think about some of the best rap songs? Some of those nominees.
They're pretty cool, but I'll be honest, I don't like them as much as the best rap album nominees. Those I'm more like in tune with, and those I'm more of a fan of than these, to be honest.
Yeah, this best rap song list definitely needs some work. I would say, just looking at the nominees, the biggest song of the year is probably Lil Uzi Vert's "Just Wanna Rock." That song was everywhere and crossed over every different genres, and it was in commercials, videos. It was all over the place, that song. So, but the only thing is with that, I don't really technically consider that a rap song. I would say, yeah, it's more like it's a little bit. It's not really rap. I would say I know Lil Uzi Vert is technically a rapper, but "Just Wanna Rock" I don't feel like was a like a rap song. As far as the best rap songs, most of the time they don't really get these lists correct, and sometimes some of these artists they don't even submit their songs or their albums for consideration to be nominated. So that could be another reason why some of our the more popular songs were on this list. But if I were to pick one, just because of what the nomination, I would probably go with Lil Uzi Vert's "I Just Want to Rock." I would say that's probably the biggest song of the year. I would say it had a huge impact.
Yeah, it definitely did have a huge impact. We'll see if it wins on Grammy night, but that is still 3 months away. Yeah, 3 months away still.
Yeah. So when is it coming out? Is it one in April? Oh, I mean, not April.
Yeah,
February.
February, like the
February.
around the All Star game time. Yeah, give or take.
Okay. All right. So yeah, we'll be looking out for the Grammys, and we'll see who wins and who doesn't, and see if they put together a nice 50 year anniversary hip hop performance.
But one more thing about the Grammys before we move on. This could be the year actually Tupac wins his first Grammy, as his film Dear Mama, which is about like more of the relationship with his mom that was on FX and Hulu, was nominated for Best Music Film. So if it does win, that would be Tupac's first Grammy
I'm surprised.
27 years later.
I'm surprised. I thought he would have been nominated or at least taking home a Grammy from some of it. Even maybe Keep Your Head Up or Brenda's Got a Baby. One of those songs I thought would have won a Grammy. But damn, I'm surprised they never did.
Well, he's been nominated before. He got nominated for Me Against the World for Best Rap Album back in the day, but he never won. So if this project wins, it'll be technically his first Grammy.
Wow, that'll be dope. That'll be crazy if that were to happen.
Yeah, all these 27 years later. I actually still gotta finish that docu series.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I never watched that show. Is it like is it based on like a true story or is it more fiction? Like how was that show that you're talking about? That was on Hulu.
It's a docu series about like his relationship with his mom. Basically like her backstory of like when she was a Black Panther, then when she was in prison, and
Oh,
then
word.
she was pregnant with him when he was in prison, and just basically their relationship. That's what it's about.
Okay, and they have like real interviews and whatnot from people like around his family, around his inner circle and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. Yeah, I might have to check that out. What about Biggie? Did Biggie ever win a Grammy or was he ever nominated?
He had to have been nominated, definitely, especially for Life After Death and More Money, More Problems and those songs. He definitely had to at least
Yeah,
have been nominated.
I would say Juicy. So it sounded like to me that's like a Grammy nominated song. Juice. I think Juicy would have been up there at least.
Yeah, definitely. But moving on, let's get into this beef between DJ Akademiks and Saucy Santana.
Wow.
All right, so basically, this whole thing started several weeks ago when DJ Akademiks was basically clowning the city girls because of their low album sales in the first week, and basically talking about how like they don't have any talent, how they suck, and how whatever fame they had and whatever flame they had is now fizzled out. And he also mentioned Saucy Santana during this whole little rant, who's actually friends with the girls. So he responded back to DJ Akademiks, basically telling him to like, yo, keep your name out of my mouth, etc. And then DJ Akademiks had a nice little response, very colorful one. And this is what he had to say. Everybody know I'm cool with the LGBT community, but no Batiman like Saucy Santana could talk to me. I'll spit in your face, nigga. Me and you couldn't have a conversation. You're a cocksucker. We don't talk to niggas like you. You need to go get right with God, go look in that mirror and figure out what the fuck going on with yourself. We ain't indicting people who are homosexuals, but a nigga like you got a mental illness, my boy. You trying to mix it up with a nigga like me.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said when I read that too. Like when I watched the video of it and like just saw how he said it, I was left speechless. I really did not know what to say after that. Like that's just a lot to take in.
Yeah, DJ Academics, that's how he's blown up by putting people down and just talking shit and just having these wild ass takes on people, and he just sits behind a computer and just talks mad shit from everybody. And I don't like the way that he puts down females. Like that's been his thing. Like there's been mad videos where he's talked shit about females and just he just goes in and I don't know. He doesn't. He just the way he comes off, or he just comes off as an asshole and just somebody who just full of themselves.
Yeah, I've heard things about him like always talking shit about black women. Specifically, this one case when he was talking about Megan Thee Stallion's album and saying that like the only reason why people were saying they liked it and why it was like selling so well was because of like the sympathy factor. But like if you took that factor out of it, she's not that good. She has nothing to offer. She sucks. All this other jazz. The little rants I have seen of him, like specifically that one, just come off very ignorant, very hater like, and just some shit I can't take seriously. And just a dude in general, just from the way he comes off, just somebody I just can't look at as someone with credibility at all. Fucking clown.
I don't understand how he gotten so big with this type of energy. Like the way that he's blown up is by bringing other people down, and I feel like with this situation, I feel like he kind of met his match. I feel like he didn't realize that what he was going to say, his comments were gonna face a harsh, retaliation. And we'll get into that in a moment of what Saucy Santana said as a reply and what Akademiks did from there. But I feel like you can't just bash women, you can't bash other communities, and then not stand up to the backlash of your comments. There's consequences for things that you say. I know he's an internet troll and his viewers love his takes and the shit that he says about people, but I feel like with this situation, he tried the wrong one and he met his match, and we'll see what happens to him from here.
And this is what Saucy Santana had to say to respond to DJ Akademiks. After I beat you, I'ma fuck you in your ass because you're a bitch ass nigga. That's what we do to you.
Yo,
That's
son.
what we do to
Yo, son.
That's what he said. That's what he said, not me. I'm quoting this dude. I'm not
Yeah, I
saying
know,
this
I
shit.
know, I know that. I know that's what Saucy Santana said, but that's just hilarious
I'm
that.
not finished yet. He had more. That's what we do to you. You always pressing a BBL, fag. Bitch, you sitting on your thick ass. Bitch, I got a BBL and you got a BBW.
Wow. Yeah, it's just hilarious, just hearing them go back and forth. And Saucy Santana went in. You might get confused, but Saucy Santana is a gangster, and it sound like Saucy Santana put Akademiks in his place. And I don't think Akademiks liked like what Saucy Santana had to say, especially trying his manhood like that.
Yeah, and he didn't like it so much that in one of his live streams, he actually started crying about the fact that he's not allowed to say anything back to him because of the fact that he's gay and he's afraid he's going to get canceled and he's afraid the LGBTQ community is going to come for him. Yeah, this fucking clown was literally in tears talking about this. Like when I saw that video specifically, I just said, bro, whatever credibility you had and very little at that, you fucking just lost this shit automatically.
It's not a good look. The way Saucy Santana replied to him, you could tell that it struck a nerve, and he didn't like that and take too kindly of what was being said about him. But I hope he learns a lesson where you can't just talk shit to anybody and not expect any type of retaliation. And a lot of bullies, this is how they are. They'll start making fun of people, or they'll put people down until they get punched in the mouth, or somebody checks them on their bullshit. And this is a case of what happened. He got checked, and he didn't like the retaliation of how he got checked. And he could talk all this shit around from his computer, but what about why won't you say this type of shit that he says in person or in front of another artist's face? Like, I feel like I don't really respect what he says, because his opinions, they come from behind a computer screen. I don't see him saying this shit in front of other artists, or in live interviews face to face. The shit that he says, like, on his live stream or whatever. So yeah, it was just funny for him to get a taste of his own medicine.
Yeah, just seeing him cry like that and seeing him be embarrassed like that, it was very gratifying. And yeah, just his opinions, like, everybody's allowed to have their own opinion, that's fine, but his opinions clearly are from a place of hate and a place of negativity. And I posted this on Facebook yesterday, and I mean it when I say this: DJ Akademiks is a Skip Bayless of hip hop personalities.
Yeah, I get some of the similarities, and I get that comparison. I just feel like Academics he's just an asshole. He's just, yeah, Academics. He's just not. I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully he learns from this situation, and thinks twice before coming at people. Because yeah, it's okay to have an opinion if you don't like an album, or if you don't like the way somebody is going about things in a certain the way that you like. But to come at artists personally and to bash them, and you don't know what these people are going through, and just to talk shit about them, and especially what people might be dealing with. You don't know what people are dealing with, and just to talk shit, and it's not about their art. It's about the person themselves. He doesn't. He just comes off as an asshole, and just it's not a good look, yo.
Yeah, I heard some story about him laughing at one of the city girls for, like, her getting her car jacked once.
Nah, that's not what happened. He laughed because her car got shot up when she was 6 months pregnant,
Oh shit, that's
and
even
he was
worse.
laughing about that, and making fun of it. Like, that's the type of shit. Like, you're a black man. You should be uplifting your fellow black women, and fellow black brothers and sisters, and black and brown. You should be lifting them up. And just the way that he comes across, he's just mad toxic. And it's the people who watch his stream and look up to him think it's cool. It's cool to come at people. There's people. When I grew up, if you talk shit about somebody, you need to stand up on it, stand on your business, and man up. And then if somebody calls you out and say that, yo, did you say that? And you stand up on it, and you say, yeah, I did. And then you stand up for what you said. But now it's like, I feel like with the internet, people could say whatever the fuck they want, and they could run around, run behind the computer screen and not get any retaliation. But you couldn't live like this back in my time. Like, you'll get snuffed in your shit, and you get knocked the fuck out. So Academics needs to tread lightly, and he needs to learn a lesson from this. Like, you can't be just talking shit about anybody. You need to be uplifting people, especially the black and brown people, because we definitely need to be brought up, not bring each other down even more.
Yeah, he basically reminds me of that type of person who always posts those, like, dumbass things online. Like a few weeks ago when we talked about people saying that Lauryn Hill is overrated and Lauryn Hill sucks. That's the kind of dude he reminds me of. Like, somebody who just says, like, those kind of dumbass things just to get attention, just to create clout. Not all attention is good attention, and in this case, that is definitely a fact.
Yeah, he has a lot of negative energy,
Exactly. That's what I don't fuck with.
and he's gonna get caught slacking one day. He's gonna get caught lacking. He's not unexpectedly, somebody's gonna catch him, and snuff him, or drop him. So he needs to be careful, because you don't know. People got people in different places, and they might be able to catch him slipping one day, and it wouldn't be a good look for him.
Yeah, and also Queen Latifah even reshared a post on her Instagram from some rapper basically talking about the fact how it's crazy that DJ Academics would talk all this shit about black women and not fear any consequences and, like, not even care. But he's afraid to talk about somebody from the gay community because he's afraid of getting canceled and afraid of people coming after him and afraid of being, like, ridiculed for it. So when Queen Latifah is resharing posts calling you out, that's not a good look.
Yeah, so hopefully Academics learns from this situation and changes his ways. If not, he's not going to be around in this culture much longer. I don't know how he's lasted this long with this type of energy and type of attitude that he has. So we'll see.
And also in his most recent live stream, he was talking about how Diddy tried to Tupac set him up when he was in London. Like, Diddy supposedly like suspiciously invited him to some party at some place, and he was kind of suspicious about the fact that Saucy Santana was going to show up and the City Girls were going to show up, and it was going to be all this kind of ruse. And he was also asking Diddy like what kind of party it was going to be, considering like the rumors about Diddy and his sexuality and all that stuff. It's not even just what he says, it's the way he says it, the way he says it, the way he pronounces it, and the way he comes off. He just comes off, yeah, very ignorant, very uneducated, and just somebody with no credibility at all. And if this dude made it and this dude has an audience, then I think we should be good with this podcast.
Yeah, with DJ Academics, like it sounds like he didn't want to be in the same area where Diddy and the City Girls were, and most likely there would have been some type of confrontation or a conversation about his comments. It sounds like he just likes to talk shit, but doesn't like to stand up to to what he says. If you're gonna say something, you're gonna be a personality and talk shit about people. Like I said, you got to be willing to stand up to it, and like if somebody sees you in public, they're gonna call you out, or they're gonna have something to say. I've seen this happen to Charlemagne when he first started. He said something about Little Kim, and then Little Kim's goons came and found him after the show, and we're chasing him down. I don't know if you remember that, watching that video, but that happened to Charlemagne. He kind of took a step back and thought twice about some of the comments that he says. So,
And also, not to mention the incident with Baby all those years ago, that infamous incident, the respect on my name shit.
yeah, that too. So, yeah, you got to be careful of who you talk shit about, because not everybody's playing around, and people are from the streets, and we'll pull that street card out and check your manhood.
Yeah, and like I said, if you don't like an album, if you don't like a song, you have the right to not like those things and say that, but just don't make it personal.
Yeah, he just crosses the line too much. So, yeah, just a cornball behavior.
And a world full of DJ academics, be a conscious Kurt King Khan. All right, so next topic. Lil Yachty recently opened up about the current state of hip hop, and this is what he had to say. Hip hop is in a terrible place. The state of hip hop right now is a lot of imitation. It's a lot of quick, low quality music being put out. It's a lot less risk taking. It's a lot less originality. I think we've made this point before.
Yeah, we've spoken about this on plenty of our podcasts, the prior episodes. I like the message that he's saying. I just don't like the messenger. I feel like the earlier music that he's come out with is music where it's like catchy and it's not, like jingles and gimmicks and shit like that, which, that's his lane, that's his thing. But I was never really a fan of his music like that. But for him to say that, it is truth of what he's saying. A lot of the music that comes out nowadays, it is like remakes of like the songs that were popular when I was growing up. And I feel like there's not an originality. It's just like everything sounds the same. There's no risk. People are taking risks. A lot of the songs are, the cookie cutter. It's like something I've heard before. It doesn't sound like something new or something that's pushing the culture forward into a new sound. So I would like for artists to challenge themselves and to not just make music just to get streams. You should make music because you love the art and you want to, have, make music that has a message and connects with people. A lot of the music right now is like very watered down. And I just miss the days when artists dropped an album like once every couple of years, where they had time to kind of like sit, work on work on the album, work on the music, and make sure that it's a great body of work. Nowadays, there's artists that drop multiple albums within a year, and then you're starting to see why the sales of hip hop are down 40% this year, because the quality of music that's being put out is not. You could tell that people are not taking their time. They're just, whatever, they get a beat, rap on it, they got a good flow, and then they just put it out. They don't really take their time and try to put an album together, have a theme, or have the songs be cohesive, or have like one producer produce the whole project where everything sounds, cohesive and sounds like, a great body of work. So I just hope that this kind of, this comment actually starts getting people to change their ways and trying to get back to bringing bars back and bringing, real music and real albums back.
Yeah, I'm trying to be more lenient towards modern music, where I'm trying to at least give it a chance before I write it off. But I will admit the quality as a whole has gone down over the years. And there is still great music to be found. There still is original music to be found and all that good stuff. But the difference between now and our era is that it feels like now you have to look for it a lot harder, and it's not like really something that's just gonna fall in your lap.
Yeah, you're right. You have to dig and find, the good quality music out there. And like the radios and a lot of these platforms, they're not pushing out the good quality music. They're kind of like pushing the same few songs over and over, and the same type of toxic music. There's no type of balance.
Yeah, that's what I will agree with for like the mainstream music, especially with the female rappers. It is exactly that, where they're kind of just pushing the same agenda, making everything for the most part sound the same, and almost every song they say the same thing. That shit gets played out real fast, annoying real fast, and no fun real fast. But you have to understand there still is good music to be found out there. There still is good music to be listened to out there. But you just have to take the effort to look for it. Don't rely on the radio. If you know what shit you like and you know what shit is top notch, go and find it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I feel like people have been programmed for so long that because it's on the radio, oh, okay, I guess that's good music. No, I feel like the radio,
No, it's not.
yeah.
No, it's not.
So on the radio, they don't play like the conscious music like that. They're promoting like sexual stuff. They're promoting violence. They're things like that, which I know we've all
Getting fucked up.
yeah, and getting fucked up music. So I know we've all had there's a time and place for that type of music, but there has to be some more of a balance. It feels like it's just all like one time. This feels like there's an agenda that's being pushed, and the agenda is being pushed on black and brown people. I don't feel like the like pop music has a lot of these type of topics or themes associated with them. So for some reason with hip hop, the music that's being forced down our throats is not it's not good music, it's not good quality music, and it has no depth to it, and no meaning, and it's just not good music at all.
A part of it is like a lot of people's own faults for like buying a lot of that negative shit and like listening to that negative shit so much. But at the end of the day, I do blame like the record labels and like the executives who like kind of push that shit, encourage that shit, and like make that shit kind of the standard, because at the end of the day they're the ones who really pull the strings, and they're the ones who really have the main control.
Yeah, it's like a lot of these companies, a lot of these radio stations are ran by people who are not like us. They're not people from our
We're
communities.
not black. Yeah.
Yeah, they just, and then I'm gonna go out and say this, like some of these people, I wouldn't be surprised if they do this on purpose to kind of push black society and brown society backwards, to make us look bad, and to kind of brainwash the youth into thinking like, yo, this type of thing is cool.
Yeah, it's definitely a slippery slope. And this kind of ties into our next subject that we're going to get into, as New Orleans rapper Dee-1 recently called out Rick Ross, Jim Jones, and Meek Mill for their type of music, kind of similar to the music we've been talking about the last few minutes. And he was basically talking about the fact that, like, it's wrong of them to be glorifying violence, specifically at this age and this stage in their careers. And he, like, name dropped all of them, specifically saying all of them need to do better.
Yeah, I do agree with D1 that I feel like, yeah, there's some artists who have evolved and changed their content. Like we talked about, like Nas and Jay-Z, how their music is much different now compared to how it was like 10 years ago. They're not rapping about murking people and shooting and robbing and all that. They're talking about how they came from that and how they evolved and how they use that and how they're giving back, and showing people a different way. And it feels like yeah, some artists like Meek Mill and Rick Ross, they are putting out good music, but you're right, there's no balance between like the conscious and street music. It's more street and violence. But
And look, I enjoyed the Rick Ross and Meek Mill album. I thought it was dope. The production was great. They both bodied it. But I will be honest, their music doesn't have the most positive message.
yeah, it doesn't. And I just feel like years down the line, I don't feel like projects like that are going to be remembered the same way. I feel like it's a dope project, like you said. Yeah, it's just that you got to have some type of balance. You got to talk about different subjects. I've kind of heard like those type of songs over and over. I want to hear something different. I want to hear growth, especially when Meek Mill, he's supposed to be like somebody who's done a lot for prison reform, and he's been caught up in the system himself. So you would think that he would mature and maybe change some of his content, to be different, but that's not the case. It's kind of like talking about the same stuff. But I would like to hear them talk about kind of like the same kind of stories and situations they've been through, And I would like them to talk about how that's not a great path to go down, and how to change their ways and how they became successful. I would want to hear more about that and what they're doing, and their day to day lives, and how they're being successful, that kind of thing.
Yeah, Dee-1 even mentioned that. He mentioned how it's kind of irresponsible of Meek Mill to be like this face of prison reform and like, stand for that stuff, but still talking about like the same shit he was doing that got him locked up and got him in trouble in the first place. And I get that point. He does have, that's a fair argument.
Yeah, and then I know Ross and Meek Mill responded. I just didn't like the way they responded. I felt like they kind of came out with a better response. It's more like they came off as kind of like brushing it off, more or less. But I feel like they could have came with like a more educated answer, better response, I would say.
Yeah, Ross basically said like, yo, until you feed your whole hood for 20 years off of your music, and until you can like buy pregnant ladies diapers for their babies for Christmas, buy kids bikes and all this for 20 years straight, don't tell me how to do my music, don't tell me how to feed my family, don't tell me how to do my own thing. You're just using my name for clout, you're using my name for attention. And yeah, like basically his response, you could like tell he was kind of triggered by it.
I understand both sides. I understand where Dee-1 is coming from, where the music needs to be more conscious, and it needs to be better quality, and it needs to be saying a message and something that's uplifting to the youth. And I do understand the other side of it, where Rick Ross and Meek Mill, without making the type of music they made, they wouldn't be as successful as they are now. Because as we know, the conscious artists, they don't normally get the shine and the recognition, and they don't get the money as compared to like commercial artists who promote violence and sex and all that. And when I look at rappers, I don't take the lyrics too seriously. The way I look at rap is I look at it like a movie. Like, there's gangster movies, where there's mafia movies where people are killing and there's a lot of drug deals and things like that. And a lot of people will gravitate and love those type of movies. So I feel like I look at rap and hip hop, that the artists that make that type of music the same way. I feel like it's more of like a character playing out a role versus like an actual person who's actually living this lifestyle, and this is how the way they are. So that's kind of how I look at it. I kind of compare them to kind of like a movie, and I kind of like visualize myself like in watching a movie when I hear their songs. That's kind of how I look at it.
The only real issue I have with like that type of hip hop is if like they're really not about that life for one, and also if the music isn't good for another point. And with Meek Mill and Ross, their music is dope. I do fuck with it, but like I said, I have to be honest. Like the message in it isn't like really a message. It's uplifting, positive, and that's gonna like maybe inspire people to change their ways for the better. But the one point I will make, as far as like them making the music that they make, is that they have a certain audience that buys that music, and a certain audience that like craves for that music from them. So if that's the main audience that's like putting money in their pockets and like buying tickets to their shows and all that other jazz, like who are they gonna cater to first? What do you expect them to do?
Yeah, they are catering to their target audience. That's the way that they grew up. That's the way that they came up in the game and became successful making that type of music. But at a certain point, I know they have kids. Just listen to the new Jeezy album. You could listen to the growth and how Jeezy has evolved and the different topics that he's talking about. Yeah, it's still a gangster album, but the just the message, and then like the tone of it is just, it's a lot different. It doesn't promote. It's not promoting violence like how his other projects used to. You could just hear the growth.
Yeah, we'll get in more. We'll get in more to Jeezy in a few minutes when we talk about the Nia Long interview. But keep going.
But yeah, I just like how artists evolve. They don't just stay in one box. I like how they just come out with different types of music, and speak on different subjects. We've heard the shoot 'em up, bang bang, drug dealer shit, for years from Ross and Meek Mill. Like I'm kind of like, after this album, I want to hear something different. And maybe they will, maybe they won't, maybe they're still stuck in their ways. But those are the artists that stay around and stay relevant for 10, 20, 30 years, is because they evolve with the times and they change their subject matter, and they realize like the type of music that they make can have a very big impact on the culture, and especially young kids who look up to them. So it just being more aware of your platform and your influence on society and the culture, and just being smart about it, and making better music, and making music that could connect with the people and uplift your people, not bring them down.
Yeah, and also the one response I really did not like was the Jim Jones response. Basically, on Sway's show, he was saying how yo, this dude better not say shit to me when he sees me in person. He better keep his hand down when he sees me in person. My little cousin might not like what he has to say. He might come for him. Don't tell me how to make my music. Don't tell me how to make my dollars. I do my shit. I feed my hood. I do a lot of shit for my hood. Don't tell me what the fuck to do. Don't tell me how to do me. Yeah, and we talk about the whole growth thing. We talk about how, like, Jeezy's grown up, and also like Ti and Styles P have grown up. But like a response like Jim Jones, for example, that kind of response, it's clear that he hasn't grown up, and like he hasn't gone through that transformation yet. And basically by that response, he kind of proved Dee-1's point.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, D1 did touch a nerve, and it is a valid point that he brought up in valid conversation. So it does have some legs to it. I understand why. I kind of understand why they're upset. It's because nobody knows who this D1 character is until he came out with this interview last week. Well, some people might know him, but he wasn't really known on like a mainstream level. What if it was somebody like a J. Cole who said this, or like a Talib Kweli, like somebody more
Or
conscious, or
Nas.
Nas, or somebody along those lines who said that? I think that message would be accepted differently. It's just that this guy doesn't really have, too much clout in the game. So when he says things like this, people are like, who the fuck is this? Like, I don't know who the fuck this guy is. Like, why am I listening to him? Why are people listening to what he has to say? But like I said, if like kind of goes back to the Yachty stuff. If it was a different messenger, I feel like the message would hit a lot better than from from being from D1. I feel like it would resonate more.
And I'll be honest, back to the whole music thing growing and evolving. As I got older, as I grew up and like got into my 20s and beyond that, the same rappers who were my favorite rappers, like when I was in high school, I didn't like their music the same anymore. And honestly, like as I got older and I saw like their music didn't really change and their music stayed the same, I kind of fell out of it a little bit. Like specifically like those mixtape rappers, like those rappers who like had good bars and good verses, but like their albums weren't great. Like those type of rappers, I really fell out of as I got older because I changed and I evolved. But the thing was, their music stayed the same. Their music didn't really grow up as I grew up. So that's why I kind of had that disconnect.
Yeah, that's what you want. That's what you want to see with artists. You want to see them from album to album. You want to see the change and the progression. The different topics, different sounds, them trying different things. You don't want to hear the same old like from 10, 20 years ago. Like, yeah, it's cool. It still sounds good sonically, but at the end of the day, like, what are we doing right now? We're pushing, like, these are 40-year-old rappers, like, and who have kids who I'm sure their kids are going off to college and shit like that, and you're rapping about murking niggas and shit. Like, this shit doesn't add up. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and D1 responded to how Rick Ross and Jim Jones responded to him. And the one thing that he said that stood out to me was that accountability is not an attack.
Yeah, I feel like both of them have valid points. Like, yeah, Ross and Meek Mill have done a lot for the community and given back, but at the same time, they need to be more aware of the type of music that they put out and the influence that they have out here. And at the same time, D1 did make some valid points with the type of music that's being promoted and pushed out by some of these artists. So yeah, I definitely understand both sides. So hopefully we can find like a happy medium where we can still put out gangster music, but it's more uplifting and educating people on how to get out from that and how to live life differently, and how staying in the hood is not staying in the hood and doing the same old shooting, killing, robbing, selling drugs. How that's not cool. How the goal is to get out the hood and to become a successful person, start a business, get a good job, like take care of your family, like taking care of your kids. That's real nigga shit. Like, I don't want to hear killing other niggas. Like, yeah, you may have had to do that when you're like 15, 20 years old trying to survive, but now look at you. You're like living in mansions and shit, and you're still talking about the same shit. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't add up.
And still acting the same way in some cases also, that's even worse. Like when I see like a lot of these people who are like in their 40s who have already made it, who are already successful, and they're still behaving like they're 15, 16 years old, it's fucking sad, son. And yeah, and D1 even mentioned that like he wouldn't come at like a 15, 16-year-old rapper who was just getting into the game talking about that kind of stuff, because he knows that like, they're still getting started, they're still new, they're still trying to get their feet wet, and they're still trying like to, grow out of that whole stage of their lives. But when it's somebody like Rick Ross and Meek Mill who are a lot older, who have been around a lot longer, and who have that life like way far behind them, for them to still be talking about that stuff, yeah, it is kind of strange.
Yeah, talk to me about investing. Talk to me about real estate, mental health, taking care of your family. That's the kind of shit
Hey,
that
to
I
be
think.
fair,
That's the kind of shit I want to hear now. Like, I don't.
To be fair, Rick Ross did have some references of that on the album, and he has before. To give him credit for that.
Yeah, yeah, he does. He does. He definitely does. So let's not say that Rick Ross just puts out all toxic music. He does have a little bit of a balance. But I'm just saying, just as in general, as rap as a whole, like yeah, that's the type of shit I want to hear about from like the older the older artists. I don't want to hear about shooting and robbing from artists who are 50 years old. Like that shit doesn't make any sense. I can understand if you're like 50, like in the 20s, that's the kind of music that that you're on. You're on that party and bullshit, vibe. So that makes sense when you're at that age making that type of music. But when you're 40, 50 years old, you got kids in college and your kids go to private school and all this, and you got butlers and nannies and shit. Like this shit doesn't add up.
Yeah, it's like, bro, that life is behind you. Talk about the life that you have now, not the life that you left behind.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about business deals and shit like that. That's the type of shit I want to hear.
I did like that verse on the Rick Ross and Meek Mill album when he was talking about how he has conversations with Tom Brady about his girl issues. That shit was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty dope. 'Cause I know, yeah, Meek Miller is pretty close with Robert Kraft, who's the Patriots owner. So I could see how he got close to Tom Brady and got cool with him over the years.
Yeah, and it was a good album. Like I said, maybe the content isn't the most positive, but the music was still good. At the end of the day, if the music is still good, I will always give that credit.
Yeah, it's still a good album. Just don't get me wrong. Yeah, some of the some people may not agree with the content, but it was still a solid album.
But we would be doing everybody a disservice if we didn't point out the fact that that toxic and negative bullshit and that image does exist out there. It does exist, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah, two things can be true. Yes, the music that we put out can be better, better quality and better, more uplifting. And at the same time, too, this is the type of music that these artists kind of grew up on and they're known for. So it's just kind of staying like within their lane and what they've been successful at doing. So like I said, I understand both sides of it. Rick Ross and Meek Mill, they've done a lot for the community to give back. And yeah, it's just like I just feel like the messenger wasn't the right person to say that type of message come at them.
Yeah, but to his credit, that Dee-1 dude is pretty nice. I heard him rap in that same interview at the end of it, and yo, he bodied it.
Yeah, he's pretty nice. It's just like people just don't know who he is. So when they see a headline, Dee-1 calls out Rick Ross, Meek Mill, and Jim Jones, then people are running with that and agreeing with him, and then they're gonna catch feelings like, yo, why is the internet coming at me and siding with this Dee-1 dude that nobody even fucking knows?
So speaking of growth, this past week, the interview between Nia Long and Jeezy dropped online, and it's gotten a lot of good and positive reviews. And it's about to get one more from us because, yo, that shit was very eye-opening, insightful, and a good use of an hour of your time. If you haven't watched that shit yet, go watch that shit as soon as you get time because you will get a lot out of it. I promise you.
Yeah, it was a really dope interview. It kind of came out of left field. I didn't expect Nia Long and Jeezy to have a sit down interview in an hour long. I thought it was maybe
Yeah, it's random. Yeah, it's mad random.
yeah, I thought it might have been like a like a 5 minute interview, but it was an hour long and it was a lot of good content, a lot of good shit that they talked about, a very dope conversation. And they both opened up about the shit that they've been going through. They both went through very public breakups, in the media over the last couple of years. So it was dope to hear both sides of them, and because you don't really hear Nia Long talk that much, especially in interviews. So it was good to hear her voice and her side of things. A lot of things that were going on with with her ex husband or whatever when he was in the Celtics. So it was good to hear that, and just good to hear Jeezy as well. He doesn't go by Jeezy anymore. It's Jeezy Jenkins is his name now. That's what he goes by now. I don't think it's Jeezy
I
anymore.
believe so.
Yeah, so Jeezy now goes by Jeezy Jenkins. So it was nice to see Jay Jenkins in an interview with Nia Long, and they talked about everything from mental health to Jeezy's upbringing in childhood to being molested. Like they touched on a lot of tough topics, and it was good to see Jeezy in a vulnerable state like that, and to kind of hear his side, his perspective on a lot of things, and he even touched on his the marriage as well. So, what did you think about some of the things, and what are your takeaways from the interview?
The main thing I'll say, if I wasn't a fan of Jeezy before this, I'm definitely a fan of his after this. Just looking at the way he comes off and presents himself now compared to when Let's Get It Thug Motivation dropped, like what, back in 2005, it's fucking night and day, bro. Like I really admire this dude for how far he's come, how much he's grown up, and how mature he seems. And yeah, just listening to him talk about like his whole life story for an hour and getting into like a lot of, uncomfortable topics, uncomfortable experiences he had through his life, and still having a good attitude about it, still be forgiving to the people who did him wrong about those things. Like if you want to see like a poster child for like progress and mental health and like dealing with your issues and the growth and positive results you can get from that, I would say look no further than Styles P, who I mentioned a few episodes ago, and also Jeezy. Because like I said, you can really learn a lot from this interview, and you can really learn a lot from the things he said in it, because that dude is a stand-up guy, that dude is a fucking legend, that dude is a fucking hero for what he survived. And if you want to look at a role model or for somebody for kids to look up to and want to strive to be like eventually, he is one of those people I would say to look up to. That's what I thought of that interview.
So yeah, which is dope. Going back to the previous topic when we talked about Dee-1 versus Meek Mill and Rick Ross, it's dope to see how Jeezy has evolved and changed himself over the years. He recently wrote a book, and then in this interview, he talked about how he had a lot of childhood trauma that he had to overcome, and he's done the inside work by going to therapy and working on himself, meditating. He mentioned that a few times, which I've actually done that myself, and it definitely helps clear your mind and help you understand your thoughts a lot more. So it was dope to see Jeezy, talk about, those topics, a lot of touchy top subjects. And you could see that, the work that he's put in has brought him to a, place where he's happy and he could be at peace with his past. Like I said, he's had a rough childhood, but you could tell that he's okay with the things that he's gone through. And, he's become a better person, from all the trauma and tribulation that he had to deal with in his life. And he's still standing here. He's still alive, and he's still thriving and evolving and growing. So it's dope to see the growth, especially how he's started in the industry 20 years ago and to where he's at now. So it was just dope to see him in that kind of light, and hopefully it encourages more artists to maybe go to therapy or maybe to address some of their childhood traumas, to see, maybe they may be able to tap into something that they didn't know that they had, or to maybe able to, to come out of that and find true happiness. Because it's because you have money and the fame doesn't mean that you're truly happy deep down. I even think that he said that in an interview that, like, he got all this fame and all this recognition and this and that, but deep down inside he wasn't happy. He was just kind of going through the motions, wasn't eating right, wasn't taking care of himself. So, just doing the work and just seeing where he's at now is just dope to see, and hopefully inspires other people to work on themselves and do the same.
Yeah, a lot of those stories that he told were crazy. Like that one story about how like it got so bad and the heat got so bad on him, like in the industry and like the whole street shit, that he would literally pick certain outfits to wear every day because he would think that that was the day he was gonna die. So he wanted to make sure he looked extra fly for that specific day. Like that's how real it got for him at one point. Like he said, like in that 6 year period from like like his earlier mixtapes to like his like I guess second and third album, he said like he was just all over the place. Like he was all wrapped up into the street shit. Like he wasn't taking care of himself. Like he was drinking like Cristal for breakfast. He said. So yeah, he was really in a bad place during those years. But then like during the Recession album, that's like when he started to change, and that's like also when I started to notice his music started to change too, and that's kind of like when I started to gravitate towards him more. And that story was fucked up though. That when he said that like during that time he was like trying to be better and trying to clean up. They tried to pin him for some like killing that happened somewhere, and like him and all of his friends got locked up, but he refused to leave jail until like all of his friends got
Yeah.
released. Also, he was there for like what 2 weeks or so, and then he said Minister Farrakhan called him and said like, "Yo, the enemy's coming for you. They know you're changing your music up, so just be aware that they're coming for you." And it looks like Farrakhan was right in that regard. And it does seem like in that sense, when you try to be more positive and you try to change your music and change your image for the better, certain people in charge aren't fans of that.
Yeah, let's be real. When black and brown people start talking positively and start talking about bringing uplifting, their own people, like there's a lot of obstacles that get thrown in these people's ways. So I'm glad that Jeezy was able to overcome that and still is still on the right path, and still evolving and growing, and he's turned into someone that we can all respect and look up to.
Yeah, he said he doesn't want to just be remembered for being a good artist. He wants to be remembered for being a good man.
Yeah, and I fucks with that. I see, like I said, like
Me
we said
too.
a moment ago, like he's not going by just Jeezy. You remember it was Young Jeezy, then it went to Jeezy, now it's J Jeezy Jenkins. He's not trying to box himself into as just being a rapper. Yeah, rapping is something that he did and has gotten to this point in his life, but that's not the only thing that he's gonna give to society. That's not the only thing that he's gonna be remembered by. Hopefully, he continues to do other things other than music, and be a positive influence for people in our culture and our communities.
Yeah, definitely. And I like the fact that, like, somebody like him and where he came from, like, made that choice to go to therapy and do that inner work to, yeah, be an example for a lot of other people who also came from where he came from. There is a stigma associated with men, specifically black men, that going to therapy means that you're soft, going to therapy means that you're a bitch, going to therapy means that you can't handle your life's problems. And I like the fact that he's an example of the fact that that's bullshit. You could still be like in your masculine energy. You could still be a masculine man and still go to therapy and still have feelings and still express those feelings. Does not make you any less of a man. So I hope people can learn that from Jeezy and like let go of that toxic mentality that's been shoved down their throat for years and maybe follow the example that he set because he set a damn good one.
Yeah, there is a bad stigma about mental health, and especially towards men. We're always taught to just be strong, to get over it. You'll be
Be
all right, that
tough.
kind of thing, and kind of be tough and just kind of like suppress your feelings. But I've learned, and just watching other people, like there's nothing wrong with therapy, and it's good for you, and you never realize some of the shit that you went through when you were a child is holding you back or affecting you as an adult, and you don't realize why you do certain things and why you do what you do. And a lot of times it could go back to trauma that was unresolved from your childhood or when you were younger, and you just didn't know how to process it properly. So shouts out to Jeezy for bringing some a positive light to therapy and showing you what could come out, how much of a greater person you can be by working on yourself, and maybe going to therapy and just being a great person, and just showing you the other side of it.
Yeah, for real. Great interview, great hour use of your time. You will definitely learn a lot from it. And he doesn't really dive too deeply into the divorce. He doesn't really get into details per se. But one thing he did say, like during the conversation, kind of gave me an idea of what happened, where he talked about like if you're in a relationship and one person wants to grow and one person wants to do the inner work and the other person doesn't want to do the inner work and is not ready to, then sometimes you have to make a tough decision and leave them behind.
Yeah, so shouts out to Jeezy, and yeah, definitely check out the interview. It's one of the definitely a dope interview.
And before we move on, the one story that kind of touched me that stood out most was like that story he told about like being like in a deep meditation session, and then like he runs into like the younger version of himself, like the one that's on the album cover. And then that younger version of himself is like crying, talking about how like he's tired of people always letting him down and always, turning their back on him and not being reliable. And then he hugs him and he says, "It's all right, it's all right." And then he talks about the fact that him and that younger version of himself like played all day and hung out all day. And he felt himself crying throughout the whole vision. And as it went on, and as like him and that younger version of himself were like playing and having fun together, those tears like turned into like a big smile. Like he could feel that smile as his eyes were closed and he was lying on the bed. Like that's how deep that shit went. And I'm happy that he got to have that experience. I'm glad that that therapy did that for him. Shout out to Jeezy.
Yeah, just yeah, it was definitely a dope story, and yeah, if you haven't already, check out the interview. It's deep. You could take a lot away from that interview.
Also, check out his album too. His album is fucking fire. Even better than the Rick Ross and Meek Mill album, I thought.
Yeah, I haven't listened through the whole thing. I listened to like most of it, but I gotta give it another spin.
It's fucking great, bro. Great production, great songs, great topics. Like you could definitely tell he's a different Jeezy from the Jeezy in 2005. And he's a prime example of that growth in music. Like he might, still have that street vibe to him and that gangster vibe to him, but you could definitely tell that he's grown up and that he has more grown up stuff to talk about in his music.
Yeah, dope. Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna finish listening to it.
All right, but let's move on. Nicki Minaj recently did a cover story for Vogue magazine, and in that cover story, she was talking about her past perk addiction. And she was talking about how she was prescribed it initially by a doctor because of menstrual cramps. And it would help her at first, but over time, after a while, she started to notice that she was taking it during times when she didn't need to take it. And it got bad to the point where like she noticed it and she eventually had to fall back and stop doing it. And now it's at a point where like any decision she makes, she has to like really think twice and think three times about it because she lives by the mentality of once being an addict, always being an addict. I also think she said recently she doesn't drink anymore either.
I'm not sure about that, but I did see, the part of the interview where she admitted that she was hooked on Percocets. And yeah, it's just unfortunate. A lot of these artists, they deal with anxiety, they have depression, and it kind of goes back to the Jeezy story where they have a lot of trauma that they never dealt with, and the way that they deal with these traumas is by running to alcohol, running to other drugs, and then sometimes when those don't work, you start graduating into harder drugs. So that's kind of like what it sounds like with Nicki, that she just got caught up. She's one of the biggest female artists that's came out in the last 20, 30 years. And, people are constantly talking shit about you online or in magazines or whatever. So your life is under a microscope. And like everything that you do is criticized. So I could see why some of these celebrities and artists, they turn their drugs into alcohol to kind of numb the pain. Like all of the big time artists have dealt with some type of addiction. Michael Jackson, Prince, you name it. Those are some of the biggest artists that ever came out, and they had their issues with substances. So,
Amy Winehouse,
and Amy Whitehouse, but I don't think she.
Mac Miller too.
Yeah, a lot. Well, yeah, the list goes on and on. Tons of artists have dealt with some type of addiction, and I'm glad that she was able to, speak up on it and admit that this was going on, because she does have a very big following and people look up to her. So it's good that she, announced this and let her people, fans and people know that, this is not cool, and if you are dealing with some type of addiction, that it's okay to get help, and that this is not the right way to go about doing things, about living your life.
Yeah, I respect that. And especially with those pill addictions, that shit can get scary real fast. Like that movie dropped on Netflix a few months ago called Painkillers, and it gets like into the whole like opioid epidemic and all that jazz, or Oxycontins, one or the other.
Yeah,
But yeah, that shit is scary. Like there's this one dude who gets like so badly hooked on it that like yeah, he just basically loses his whole family and loses everything just for that. There's this one scene where the pill like falls like behind the oven, and he literally like just goes behind the oven, unplugs the whole thing, and like searches nonstop until he can find it. Yeah, that shit is
that's
scary,
nuts.
son.
Yeah, I don't want to be addicted to anything that bad where I gotta be like moving furniture out the way because my fix fell or something. Like that's nuts. That's a whole nother level of addiction. So yeah, shouts out to Nicki
Yeah.
Minaj for speaking up. Also Dave East in a recent interview also talked about how he was addicted to lean and syrup and all that kind of shit. I never understood, the infatuation with lean and all that stuff, but he admitted that it was affecting him, his relationships, and he was like just feeling out of it. And it was to the point where one of his boys like had to go to the hospital or he almost died or whatever. And that kind of was like his wake up call to like, yo, I can't be doing this shit no more. Like it's affecting me. It's like when I'm not using it, I'm not, I don't feel right, and I feel like I'm gonna die or some shit. Like he didn't like the feeling of like the withdrawal symptoms of when he's not on it. He was on it so much that when he wasn't on it, like it was fucking his body up, and he couldn't function without it. So that was something that he admitted that he had a kick. So it's very, very serious when you get addicted to these drugs, because it can kill you, and it can affect it mainly affects the people around you more than anything, because those are people who love you, who got to deal with you passing away or something happening to you. So think of very hard before you start taking any of these drugs, because it's not a good look and it doesn't lead to anything positive.
All right, so shout out to Nicki Minaj for that. And yes, if you have a problem with any of that stuff that we mentioned, anything that's, and if it goes that deeply and that hardcore, I sincerely hope you find a way to get help and move past it for your sake and also for the sake of those around you.
Definitely, could definitely get some help or talk to somebody about it.
All right, so King Khan, break down Nas's Paid in Full Foundation that announcement that just came out the other day.
Yeah, so Nas and Steve Stout they announced the formation of the Paid in Full Foundation. So this is a dope project because this is giving back to some of the hip hop artists and forefathers in our culture that they got recognition for helping hip hop and pushing it to where it is, but they never received like financially the same kind of rewards or the same benefits. So it shouts out to them for putting this foundation together because it's gonna give back to. I heard Rakim and like Scarface are some of like the first artists to get $500,000 each, which is dope because I don't believe that they got really compensated based on the contributions that they made to our culture. Because I know hip hop didn't really make a lot of money until like the '90s. I would say that's when we really started seeing a lot of money in the industry. And some of these artists, they help get hip hop to where it is now, but they never receive like any of the monetary rewards from it. So shouts out for them for kind of like putting like a pension program in place for some of our our forefathers in hip hop. Maybe they could have continued their careers, or they could have done a lot more if they had the finances. So shouts out to Nas and Steve Stout for putting that together.
Yeah, I definitely want to see these artists get paid what they deserve. And we've heard these stories a million times about different artists, whether it's hip hop, whether it's R&B or any other music genre, just getting ripped the fuck off. Like, I don't know if you know the story of New Edition, like when they first toured, like when they were kids. After they got off tour and they had like a big ass hit record, a hit album, and all that jazz, they only made like $1.50 a piece.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, a lot of these artists they were signing, whack ass deals. They were just signing deals just so that way they can get on, but they weren't really making the money that they could have made because they just didn't know any better. They didn't have the education. So it's dope that they're at least, getting something now, while they could still enjoy, while they're still alive and they could still enjoy some of it.
Yeah, I hate to see these artists like put in all this work and make all this history and get all this attention and then not get compensated the right way for it. Hell, even TLC opened up about it in the Grammys that one year. Like after they won all these Grammys for Crazy Sexy Cool, they were like talking about the fact that like, yo, we're like this famous and we're this popular and we're still broke as fuck. Something's not adding up.
Yeah. So just because just because you hear a song on the radio or the artists are all over social media or on TV and the internet that they're making millions and millions of dollars, that's not always the case. Some of them are in bad contracts. But they got jerked. They didn't sign a good contract and they just don't have as much money as you think they do. So, but shouts out for this foundation of you're going to give back to some of these artists that definitely need it and should have been compensated a long time ago.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, no matter who the A&Rs are, no matter who the record executives are, any of that jazz, the artists are the ones who make that shit happen. And without them, there is no art.
Yeah, definitely.
So this past Thursday on November 9th marked the 30-year anniversary of the release of two classic hip-hop albums, and those two classic hip-hop albums being Midnight Marauders from Tribe Called Quest and Enter the 36 Chambers by Wu-Tang Clan. And the fact that these two albums came out on the same day is some crazy ass shit. Because these two albums specifically are the ones that are credited for turning the tide more in the East Coast favor as it came to like how the popularity of hip hop music at the time. Because up until then, the West Coast was having their run with NWA, then Ice Cube afterwards, then Dre and Snoop after that. But it was the release of Tribe Called Quest's album and also Wu-Tang's album on this day that kind of turned the tide more in the East Coast direction, which would lead to also the releases of Biggie and Nas the next year, followed by Mobb Deep, Jay-Z, and so and so. And yes, this specific day and these specific albums can be credited to like the explosion of like the 90s New York hip hop scene that we all know and love. What are your thoughts on the impact these albums both had and the fact that these albums are now 30 years old?
Yeah, these are both dope classic albums from the Tribe Called Quest and the Wu Tang Clan. I would say two of the best and biggest rap groups of all time. And it was dope how both albums were they were both hip hop albums, but they were both different. Like Tribe Called Quest is more like the backpack rappers, more boom bap style of hip hop.
Laid back.
Yeah, laid back style of hip hop with like cool and smooth beats and dope vibes. So that was the kind of feeling that the Tribe Called Quest gave you, and then the Wu Tang Clan was kind of like the opposite. It was kind of like that hardcore, in your face, punchlines, bars, those kind of, that kind of hip hop. So it was dope how they both were kind of different. They both helped New York get back on the map as far as like being like the capital of hip hop. And these albums still slap to this day. 30 years later, I went and listened to them, the other day, and they're both albums have some dope tracks on there, and they still are hitting, 30 years later, and they're still dope. You can still play them to this day.
Yes, you can still play them to this day. I listened to both of them also this past week, and damn, bro, when they say they don't make them like this anymore, they were referring to those albums. Like you said, both albums are both very different. Both have different vibes, but both are so fucking good. And not just good, so fucking important to the culture. The two most important hip hop groups of all time would be NWA for how they started the West Coast movement, and I would say Wu Tang for starting the East Coast movement.
Yeah, you can't argue with that. As far as Wu Tang, that album alone, the 36 Chambers, just every song from top to bottom is pretty dope. The whole entire album, that could be like one of the best hip hop albums of all time. It's definitely in the top 10. And this was the first introduction to Method Man, Raekwon, Ghostface, Inspector Deck, like the whole crew. This was like their introduction to, for the world. And you could, like, there's so many classic records on that album, like Cream, Wu Tang Clan, Ain't Nothing to Fuck With, Method Man, which is a huge hit. Can It Be All So Simple? Like, there were songs on there for days. Protect Your Neck. Like, there's so many songs on that album, and it was the first, like I said, the first introduction of one of the best groups of all time. And you can see from there, you can kind of get a glimpse of how these artists were so dope that they could venture on and to create their own solo albums. That's how dope that they were. So definitely a monumental time in hip hop. And then as far as the Tribe Called Quest, their album was pretty dope, like I said. And it made me realize, listening to this again, how dope Phife Dawg was. Like him and Q-Tip going back and forth. Like Phife Dawg has some bar, and like his punchlines, it was just crazy and ahead of his time. So rest in peace to Phife Dawg. He passed away a few years ago, but he was one of the best lyricists, especially during the '90s. Like I feel like he didn't get the shine and recognition that he should have, but he's definitely up there as one of the dopest lyricists in the '90s. It's just a dope album, man, and I love how the Tribe Called Quest infused jazz and hip hop, and like award tours, like one of the dopest hip hop records, and also electric relaxation. Like that song is like on a whole nother level, from the production to the bars. Like, and that song was even in the intro for
Wayans
the
Brothers,
Wayans Brothers,
yeah.
which was one of the Wayans Brothers was one of the biggest shows in the '90s. As far as when I was growing up, it was a dope show. So definitely two monumental albums. They had a lot of influence on the culture, and you can see that 30 years later that they still stand the test of time, and they still serve as like a milestone of a change in hip hop.
Without these two albums like really changing the tide, we get no Ready to Die, we get no Illmatic, we get no Infamous for Mobb Deep or Reasonable Doubt. Yeah, they were basically the ones that like really started that whole boom, that whole mid to late '90s New York hip hop vibe that we love so much, that we cherish so much. It was these two albums that really sparked that up. And yeah, you can't find two better albums to listen to than these two. Like if you're a real hip hop head, those are two albums you need to listen to if you really want to have an understanding of the culture, hands down.
And if you want to hear like the start of the Wu Tang Clan movement, which ventured into TVs, movies, clothing, like the list goes on and on. So it was definitely a start of one of the best groups of all time.
Yeah, it spawned so many careers, from Method Man's career, Ghostface, Raekwon, RZA, and props to RZA on the fucking production for this album. RZA and Q-Tip for the
Yeah,
production on these two albums specifically. Your round of applause, son.
yeah, two of the dopest producers of all time. They definitely will go down as two of the best.
Who was creating a sound during that period like the two of them were creating?
Yeah, not nobody remembered, and there were totally different styles too. It's not like they clashed or kind of like were kind of in the same lane. There were two totally different groups, totally different vibes. So it was just dope that it's just this is what I like. I like to see different, balance in hip hop. You had the hardcore stuff, and then you had the smooth stuff. So it was just a dope time in hip hop, around 93, 94.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't have to all be the same. Everybody brought something different and everybody was unique.
Exactly. Kind of going back to our one of our earlier conversations, how like everybody's not the same. Everybody was original. They did their own thing. And back then, you had to be nice. You had to have a message. You had to be spitting bars. Like you can't just have any gimmicks. Like you had to be nice. You had to be raw.
Shout out to Wu Tang. Shout out to Tribe Called Quest. Rest in peace to Fife. And also rest in peace to Old Dirty Bastard, as it was the anniversary of his death actually yesterday. 19 years.
R.I.P. to both of them, man. Two legends in the game.
This past week on November 8th marked the 21-year anniversary of the release of the film 8 Miles, starring Eminem, who was arguably the biggest star in hip hop at that time. And this story was basically kind of like a semi biography about how he came up in the game, how he came up like in the underground hip hop scene in Detroit in the mid 90s. And I gotta say, one of the better hip hop movies I've seen, period.
Yeah, 8 Mile is one of the most memorable hip hop movies. We got to see how, kind of how Eminem came up in the game. So it was just a dope movie for the culture, and yeah, just open your eyes on to Detroit hip hop and how, like I said, Eminem came and got his foot in the door.
Yeah, because Eminem kind of gets a bad rap. I know, like, especially when he first came into the game, a lot of other rappers probably didn't take him seriously or didn't respect him or thought of him as an outsider. But this movie specifically is where you see, like, how he earned his stripes and how, like, he wasn't just somebody who had everything handed to him. Like, everything he got, every piece of success he achieved, he earned that shit.
Yeah, he definitely. So shouts out to Eminem. Definitely one of the best ever in the game. He had a lot of influence and a big impact on the culture, and I would say that's when I really started respecting Eminem a lot more after I saw the movie and kind of learned a little more about his backstory and his history, how he came up in the game. So it was definitely made me respect Eminem a lot more after seeing that movie.
Yeah, because a lot of people would hear like, his wacky ass songs like My Name Is and Real Slim Shady and Without Me, and they would judge him strictly off of that. But if you like really listen to his albums, you really listen to his content and like really see what he's about, and you like really pay attention to his skill, this dude is for real. This dude is legit. And definitely that movie specifically, when you see his story and like the different battles he had to go through in order to make it, you definitely see why he deserves to be where he was and where he still is now.
Yeah, I don't get how some people try to discredit him. You may not like his music, but you definitely got to respect his grind and how he worked his way up and got himself to become to become a household name. So and become a legend in the game. So he definitely earned it, and he's paid his dues and worked his way up.
Also, that movie had a great cast, also with Mekhi Phifer, Kim Basinger, who looked a lot different than she did in Batman, that's for sure.
Yeah, she was a lot older, yeah, by that time.
And also, her character was a lot more kind of like, not healthy in a sense.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She looked totally different in that
And
movie,
also,
but yeah,
also the late Brittany Murphy. And one of the best parts of this movie were the fucking battles. The fucking battles.
yeah, the battles were pretty dope. And what was the name of the movie? White Rabbit or something like that?
B Rabbit. B Rabbit was his name.
Yeah, B Rabbit, White Rabbit. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was dope. It was a dope movie. I haven't seen it in a while, man. Go check it out.
Yeah, it's on Netflix. It's kind of like I kind of feel like in a way that was kind of the peak of the whole battle rap craze was kind of like when this movie came out.
Yeah, I could see that how it definitely influenced that.
And also the theme song to the movie Lose Yourself was one of the highlights of it, to the point where it was the first rap song to win the Oscar the following year. And that shit is saying a lot. I'm sorry, Lose Yourself, the very first rap song to win an Oscar. Holy shit. And that song is great, by the way. That song is fucking fire from start to finish.
Yeah, it was a dope song, dope movie, and a dope story. So just a monumental time in the culture.
Very monumental. Shout out to Eminem. And before we get out of here, King Khan, break down some of our new releases coming out.
Yeah, I'm gonna go quickly. Just tap into some of the new projects. Like I said, it's the fourth quarter. This is when some of the best music tends to come out. So a lot of dope projects that are been recently released. We did speak up already about it. The Ross and Meek Mill, "Too Good to Be True" came out last week. It's definitely a must listen to. A lot of dope tracks on there. Some good features. Fab is on there. French Montana, a couple others. But it's a dope project. So they did not disappoint. So definitely check that out. We also had Lola Brooke, who's from Brooklyn. She's kind of a mix, like a modern version of Foxy Brown and Little Kim, and she's pretty dope. She dropped her debut album this week called Dennis's Daughter. It's a dope project. She has a lot of good features on there, a lot of good energy, and she's rapping and doing her thing. And she has a lot of I would say samples from like some of the songs that we kind of grew up. She actually even sampled "Stop Being Greedy" from DMX, so you might
Nice.
want to check that album out. So it's pretty dope, especially for a female rapper. So that's another dope project. Also, speaking of females, Lady London, we talked about her a few weeks back with the BET Ciphers. She dropped her debut album, which is pretty dope as well. So definitely check that out. And then also, finally, we had Larry June and Cardo. They dropped a rapper and producer album. So Cardo, you might have heard him. He's produced a lot of tracks for Wiz Khalifa and Currency back in the day. And he joined up with San Francisco artist Larry June, who's been, killing it the last few years. He's kind of like in that currency type of vibe, kind of like laid back type of tracks. So him and Cardo put together a dope project. So I would check that out if you're into like some laid back hip hop. And then also a single that I forgot to mention last week was Rhapsody dropped her song called Asteroid. She's a pretty another dope female artist who's been around for the last few years. This song is produced by Hit Boy, who went on a nasty run with Nas over the last 3 years. So this is a dope track. She's been away for a little while, and I feel like she kind of plays the background too much. I would like to see her a lot more in the limelight because she's that skilled and that talented. I feel like she should be, put herself out there a little bit more. But nonetheless, it's a dope song called Asteroid, produced by Hit Boy. And finally, some R&B. Chris Brown dropped his 1111 project this past week. So there's a lot of dope music that's flying out there right now. So whatever platform you like to listen to music on, definitely check out. But there's a lot of dope stuff out there. So yeah, listen up.
Yeah, check it out. Also, Andre 3000 is dropping an album this Friday, but it's an instrumental only album.
Yeah, I saw that this morning when the news broke, and I was kind of upset. Well, but hopefully this does spark some of like his creativity, where he wants to get back in the booth and start rapping again. So we'll see what happens. But I was kind of happy and upset at the same time. Like, yes, he's dropping the album, but I was kind of disappointed that it's going to be a flute album,
Damn.
which was kind of sucks.
I'll still give it a listen anyway. I'm sure he pulled off some good shit on there.
Yeah, I'll check it out, but there's no rhyming at all.
Damn.
Like it's to the point where he's putting a disclaimer on the album cover that there's no bars, there's no rapping. It's
Fuck.
just straight flute instrumentals. So yeah, I'll take a listen and see what he's talking about. But hopefully we definitely need that Andre 3000 rap album. We need a new album.
Yeah, it's just the biggest tease, but what are you gonna do? Yeah, but I think instead of going to see Lauryn Hill, I want to go see Jeezy when he comes to Atlanta on the 15th. I think I'd rather go to that show instead.
Yeah, I think Jeezy would show up.
And you'll get your money's worth and he won't cut a promo on you.
Yeah, he won't question. He won't tell you that it's a privilege for him to show up. He won't say that.
Yeah, it's sad, bro. Especially like if you listen to Lauryn Hill's music and kind of like what she stands for in a sense. Like for her to have that kind of attitude and mentality, yeah, it's mad disappointing.
Yeah, it's not a good look. So, but
Ah,
yeah, Jeezy should put on a good show.
yeah, like I said, bro, finish listening to that album. There's some good shit on there. Some very fucking good shit on there.
Yeah, I'm gonna check it out. There's just a lot of music coming out that's hard for me to
Keep up
listen to
with.
everything. I
Yeah, I
just
get
gotta
it.
take some time and yeah, listen to it little by little
All right,
and catch
so
up.
before we get out of here, King Khan, let people know how they can listen to other episodes of the podcast as well as how to follow us on social media.
If you want to listen to episodes of the Shifting the Culture podcast, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and all the other major platforms wherever you like to catch and listen to your podcast. If you'd like to, please subscribe, like, and share. Yeah, so just make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and to spread the word about the Shifting the Culture podcast. And if you have any topics or anything that you like to talk about off the podcast, feel free to hit us up on our social media. It's Shifting the Culture podcast on all platforms.
Yeah, so check us out, holler at us, and until next time for King Khan, this is Conscious Kurt for another edition of the Shifting the Culture podcast. Take care, have a good one, and remember, whether you're an old school head or a new school head, always respect the culture. Have a good one, guys.
Peace.